Kaya yung sa tini, takat yuhan. Ye awa achtuasaku kitain yilsai. Khatqa tlal kitain khwalsa. Kwalyisaku ach uchunigan. Ye awa yata nuk awa ach ʼas'tuyéigi. We da hechi. Do een kachwaniga da. Yisukuke ʼas'tuyéigi ʼqutsati wan qanins. ʼas'tuyéigi. Hoqa tlaichosaku dasawe. Ch'ak. Anooshí aya Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Ye haswutian. Nu aya ayewuti. Nu. Just nu aya nu qeig ye haswutian. Yet the katat has to da Lingít ani. Kiksadi aya has to ani. Kagwantan awa has to ani. Kluknach adi awa has to ani. Gwalch'ak awa tel wuchchuch ye has to teach. Ya chakut ani ya has to jivu. Ya uhan klukach adi ha ani ya yuhan ko wede. Wuchchuch aya ye ha wutik a tlek a hit yi. We hit ko just tlek nach sati a. Gwal an yadi awa has to hit yi. Tlech an yadich usti. Gwal chakut hiti de has good. Tlech has wush has good de shai. Gwal lisa ku tlech shuku awa chalta katqa. Lingít kusti yitin. Ye awa ko has to ani kach. Gwal ka gwantan ani. Tlech gwal kiksadi ani aya. Has au satin nich kach yun gutta wewish. Ka shan. Kach nach yanig. Has au satin. Wanach sawe wetlet ka ha ani kach. Nu qeig aya ye awa has to neshi. Aqa awe daku tsikit. Ho, wasa at bunek. Kanach awe bunik. Has to khant aya. Has liwa guk. Has a kawa aqawe. Has awus nechi. Like wuna. Yak yik de we. Has awsata. We wuna yaka. Has you shut the honey. Kadu keilki has. Ade has wukuch. Has to in aya. Kanach nigit. E awa has to in a kawanik we Anooshí. Anooshí awa has to in a kawanik. Lingít. Watusatinaya ya gaawú. Kanachwe wunik. Daku zagit. Kautua aqawe du itwatudashi. Klesh adeko Jawuna aya hajig. Ajoy hatu wasaku Taak.eetí. Yaku owe. Hade wutusata. We Anooshí shadahani waka. Gunalchish. Seqanen gwalkuchte gachita koch. Kuig aya. Yagachtu sahi yijiyis. Ajoy hatu wasaku gunalchishi yautusakai. Ye awa. Taak.eetí yawachian. Aqa kuchte has wada koch. We shadahani. Katu keilki has. Ya atcha aya has to ayiri has ausane. ʼas'tuyéigi ʼqutsati qo'a. Ye awadu ina kawanik. ʼas'tuyéigi. Sheetk'á. We Anooshí tlal has awas kuhayu qatangi. Qu awa qutsati. Qwal Lingít Anooshí. Ch'dechi has awas kuwan. Sheetk'á Anooshí. Tleshawu dehin is ʼas'tuyéigi ginki'a. Lingít q'inach away we shadahani du keilk. Ye awa ashakawa ja. Ade nagu. Tlesach tuashku du dustini. Ade nagu ko'a. Wudus iyiyede. Aqa awe khan kawanik dasa. Khan kananik dasa we haqitas awati. Ade wugud. Qayet einach ade wugud du keilk. Ausatin we yandashani we wunaye qa. Du qats gli aya yag. Achasa kawa khash. Has ausi hasa kawa we lingit du qeet has du qeetaya has awati. Ha. Adawut. We gaawú. Ḳwáan. Gwallisaku Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ka Taak.eetí Ḳwáan tlelchashugus has usti. Achu ko'a Sheetk'á. Ye awachwa dachuni nach sha Sheetk'á awe Taak.eetí de has ḳuwligaaw. Yanwa sha ḳuwligaaw has du idach. Has du tudach awe. Ye Sheetk'á Ḳwáan has du tawasagu Taak.eetí de has ḳuwligaaw. Ḳuwligaaw. Qin yudusagu at qin. Has du tawasagu has du jiyewuti. Ade has wuqur Sheetk'á Ṭaak.eetí de jilqat. Jilqat qanachawe has litzin. Has aushagug adawut ḳuwligaaw. Has aushachwe qo'a aushachwe. Ha! Ye awa watu achwe Anooshí ch'adasa has du tawasagu ye has awasnei yi'in. Qayishawat yisha'in. Tleye has iqwati. Has kawashuk. Qan has du tuye tiqo awe Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Quchte has wudaquch. Has in qunalqawut. Qunalqawut. Adawut klein quwustian. ʼas'tuyéigi da. Ye aweshkalnik klein. Ya yidet qo'a. Táax'aa wait that's the way. You said we cage. We das kuchsa wait just you that the way khoach. Anna heek. Yeah, we kudach yikuwat we zoom. Gwalli ya waka. Yet the koach to us a gu yisatini. Ya dach qudzati qanaska we qudzati adat you tuch the tank. Tlach to us gu ye yachwakai. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. Like tlach yuchatangi. Shukwa aya adat you tuch the tan. Hin qayach ku'u. Has du to us a gu Lingít has awas ku'u. Tlach has awas kuqa'a. Hin qayach. Yadua qayach. Hin Taak.eetí ko'a. Yuhan. Hin Taak.eetí. Lingít qone aya ya anaskwéin. Itch'a ituasagu. Gwal Taak.eetí ye qwati. Sheetk'á. Eat. Ye awe chatl. Wutusaku. Sheetk'á. Chatl aya. Chatl. Neil yachyati. Sheetk'á. Qunach qatlan. Aqwa. Tlach to ashku waita. Tlach ade aya. Qanqaseku ya. Wehin ta de. Helwasa. Daqqa Lingít tlach. Elhini aya hadaat'eetí. Oh, yake. Yatatsu. Shadaku. Hastu tawasagu shashakite haswu ati. Hastu tawasagu lingít has awasku. Tlashas awasku koa. Aka awe. Shayaku. Yuhan aya shayaku. Kone aya ya anaskwéin ya hayukatangi. Hasko shashakiku. Shashakiku yigursati. Gwaltek Taak.eetí. Ya has anaskuk ya hayukatangi. Ya ha anashkuk. Ya naski aqatsati. Tlal kakshahit. Gwal shadaku qahin qayaku. Aq'tuyéigi. ʼas'tuyéigi. Aqa awe yohan. Shayaku qahin taku. ʼas'tuyéigi. Shashakiku qaeetí. As. Gwal shayi. Hechwasaku qa dak as awe. Qawe adatki. Tsusani xsati we adatki. Yechwaji. Yataqo hechwasaku. Yechaqowu sa Taak.eetí. Ya yedatqo wishkalnik. Gwallisaku yashkalnik. Shkalnik tlein qudzati. Taak.eetí. Uhan qo atlel we shkalnik tlein dati jagachtuni. Like. A's'tuyéigi yachyati. Tlel takat at uski Adach awe kachsacha. Atlein yuqatank. Tlel achtua ushka uchkeochsani awe de yuqatangi. Aqwa just ayegu geng qone gachtusaku. Shukwayata. Ye anaika yuqatan. Sheetk'á Ḵwáan. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Guti yaduhu. Sheetk'á Ḵwáan. Gas aya. Akach kauduwa chako. Dulsaa awe gutil. Gwal tlesha utehin aya ausaku dulsaa. Gutil qoa yudusak. Sheetk'á Ḵwáan. Qone aya ausacha. Lingít. Ajoe Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Awe Sheetk'á Ḳwáan khusati. Ye anaka. Qutz. Yata qutz aya. Chakutatsu chakutaa. Akakawe wuduwasa. Yisikuke gwal Lingít q'aqi. Ya as. Lingít q'aqi dachke uwa ai. Qutz yuduwasak we as. Yiqaqwawu sa Taak.eetí. Gweil. Tiq'isani. Ketlt. Táax'aa, Táax'aa, Táax'aa. Ye awa asai, ya yidat, ye daduni at, asaku, ye daduni at. Yidat, ziyak, ziyagen. Yidat, ziyak, ziyagen. ʼas'tuyéigi, ʼas'tuyéigi, ʼas'tuyéigi. ʼawat'tuyéigi, ʼawat'tuyéigi, ʼawat'tuyéigi. ʼaqwat'tuyéigi, ʻaqwat'tuyéigi, ʻaqwat'tuyéigi. Yat'ij, yat'ij, yat'ij. Wut'ij, wut'ij, wut'ij. K'ekwat'ij, k'ekwat'ij, k'ekwat'ij. Kwaltziyak ayi, yisitin ke shukwa. Tlesh akina at kusti, like ke, tlesh ke. Yisiku, ga, aya, yatatut. Yanakut, yanakut, yanakut. Woogood, woogood, woogood. Kakakoot, kakakoot, kakakoot. Yata edach, eitlhini day. Taak'aya, eitlhini day. Yek, yek, yek. Yek yanakut, yek yanakut. Yek woogood. Ooh, what like? Yek wajiyata. Adataya kakwatuzayaka. Yek uwakut. Yek uwakut. Yek uwakut. Yek kakakoot. Yek kakakoot. Yadu Waita tlaik. Yata Yata tlaik. Yek klam. Yek uwakut. Yek uwakut. Yek uwakut. Klesh yek woogood. Klesh yek woogood. Klesh yek woogood. Anooshí, 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 Anooshí. Yadu ka ka. Yatatsu. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Dulsaa ʼquwashí. Sheetk'á ʼquwashí. Yadu ka. ʼAs'tuyéigi, ʼAs'tuyéigi, ʼAs'tuyéigi. Kwaltisitin ch'shugu ziyak. idat. Ye agursateen. Ye agursateen. Ye agursateen. Yatatsu tsiyakin at yisateen ge. Ye. Tash ye. Ye. Yisaku. Qa. ʼas'tuyéigi. Ga. Ke. Qa. Ye. Akachisht. 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 Ashawachich. 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 Ashaqquachich. 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 Ye naskit. Ye naskit. Ye naskit. Yatatsu. Gwall. Qone yanachich ya yidat. Yanachich. 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 Gwall yisateen ya na. ʼas'tuyéigi tleltaasa gwall na. Ye. Qa. Ke. Ga. Ke nakain. Ye andakan. Ye andakan. Wudzagit. 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 Yekaqwaskit. 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 Ach ya anastain. Yisatinge wunayi at. Gwall ta wutayi tukaneitsu. Chudechia. Yataqa wuna. Tehuj. Ach ya anastain. Ach ya anastain. Ach ausata. Ach ausata. Ach ausata. Ach agursata. Ach agursata. Ach agursata. Decha uyech. You go uyech one. Get the tlechkosti. Shoot out the uck. Shoot out the uck. Shoot out the uck. Hu owe out the yech. We gun. We khan. Out the yech. Shoot the agurta ark. Shoot the agurta ark. Hujayata. Akadeya anachut. Akadeya anachut. Akadeya anachut. Akat our hut. Akat our hut. Akat our hut. Akade akqahut. Akade akqahut. Akade akqahut. Shkashnik gaawú aya. Gwallisatin. Atlain atawish kashnik 2 day. Ye akachisatin. Dakkai washtas hataya. Itchash the katu. Dakkai hawuti. Tax'aa haqqusti ak. Qusaqaqan qutzati wega. Tlaydaqqa awatloon. Tlallyeq hugud. Dukik du iqaquwashi. Tlallyeq hugud. Yakiki a du hunchu hasqaquwashi. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ʼas'tuyéigi. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan sh'away shawachich. Lingít. Adach ʼas'tuyéigi yadak tlekwail tude. Awa aku awa atudach kewugudi. Alk'uds yatik'isani. Awa shad we Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ch'usi. Gan wugudi awa ashawachich. Shoot at the ark. Tle akat uwagut. Wa Sheetk'á Ḳwáan k'etlti awa awla'uch. Kawayich yuwune awa Táax'aa wusati. Achawe Taak'aa Ḳwáan. Ye awe wishkalnik. Ya yidat achtuwasuku tleqanach yi idekakwaha achtuwasuku ituwu aqa q'akakkinik tleqaq'inach. Shuqwa'a adusaqwa'a. Kinach natu.
We are inland.
Lingít q'inach shuqwa. Just natu yata Taak.eetí.
Taak.eetí.
Dulsaa yidat Lingít q'inach.
Tlach ayawut ich hakusti ach.
Tleqaq'inach.
Tlish kwasaku tlach ayawut ich hakusti glekachinach our way of life.
Johan yisikuge. Oh, I see. Tla'tlatina jatutieta. Taak.eetí.
Was very difficult. Our way of life was very hard.
Je awa. Yataqa'a. Adusoit tlall unatuch.
Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ḥwligaaw.
Tleqaq'inach tasawe.
Something was born a long time ago.
Yata born. Yata exists. That's a Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Yata Achadi Qa awacha. Hu oekhatsu. Gwell yisikuge. We dutsechi kucheta ku'u. We atwudiqini at ayiktewe ye haswuti. Wudzigit qo'a shashakik. Tlal atcha hasujiye wuti. Ajoy qone has to khunkiyen hasawacha. Qusacha. Qusacha. Sheetk'á Ḵwáan. Wetaqo akutil. Tlach a kawalchit shan ayi. Tletkaq inachoa. Dasa kagachtu sharhi.
Cannibal?
Gwell yet atsu. Hetfasauti. Adusa ya idat weta.
Tleinach un.
Cheesh. Tletkaq inach dasawi.
One person they hunted.
Yeah, awe. Qa person ye khaji. Khosaku yashkashne qa. Qa awe we qa. Itaqa. Adusa tlel sakhwaach.
Tlechyeik.
Cheesh. Tletkaq inach dasawi.
They didn't go towards the sea.
Ma. Yeah, awe. Wasa kagachtu shahid. Sha gwell sha da aya awalun. Adusa tlel utuj qa. Tlel natuj.
Du kik, du igra, khuwashi.
Cheesh. Tletkaq inach isikuga. Du kik. Du iqa. Kuwashi. Aqa kuwashi.
His younger brother went hunting for him, looking.
Yeah, awe. Yeah, awe. Or for him. Yeah, awe. Yataqa.
Tlechyeik.
Tletkaq inach.
He didn't come back. He didn't.
I think yende gwell yata. Natu.
Ya kiki dukhunku haska kuwashi.
Cheesh. Tletkaq inach dasa.
This younger brother of his older brother. Kwasaku haska kuwashi. They found him.
Looked for.
Searching.
Searching for, yeah.
Oh.
So Kiki would be the youngest one. And it could be male or female, depends. It needs to be set up by something else. So just like that, you can have Hunchu that would be the oldest boy. Sheetk'á, the oldest girl. As far as like talking about somebody's kids or a set of siblings. Hunchu has would be older brothers, and that functions just like a complete noun. So you don't have to say duhunchu has du iqa. You just say duhunchu hasqa. Looking for the youngest one went looking for the older brothers. His older brothers. The hunch also tells us the gender of all. It's 3 brothers. That's how the story goes. So. Jaidat.
Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ʼas'tuyéigi.
Sheesh.
The cannibal saw them.
Well, in this case, because this one is talking about this younger brother, we just assume that's who's doing the thing. So while this could technically be interpreted as like the cannibal saw him, it should be he saw the cannibal. Just because that's how it just sets up who we're talking about, then you'll see it right here, it'll switch. It'll show you when it's switching.
That was my English brain.
ʼas'tuyéigi. Is there anybody out there whose voice we haven't heard yet? Okay, anybody want to read this?
Dulsaa Ḳwáan Anooshí.
Sheesh. Ḳuwligaaw.
So does the CH then make the cannibal the subject?
Yes, that's the way it works. We kind of get a main character, then when we need to switch to say now someone else does something, that's what the CH marker does. And a lot of times, if it's unclear who could be doing the thing, it'll mark the subject there. Also, if it does it immediately preceding the verb, and away doesn't really count as something that would break it up, then the disappears as the third person object. Not a big deal, but just something that does happen. So that would usually be a shawachich. But now we get Sheetk'á Ḳwáan shawachich, which would be, was it clear from the illustration?
Whacked him over the head.
Clubbed him on the head is really, that's literally what the verb is. It's a shawachich. So you see the sha built onto it. Chich or chish. Chish means to club something or whip it or to hit it. Okay, we're halfway there. Not too.
With Lingít.
Like ʼaqi'nach.
That he fell down.
He fell. Yata.
Adach ausata weyadaq tlekwe today.
Sheesh. Like ʼaqi'nach. Adach ausata.
Picked up the dead body?
Or unconscious,
Unconscious. Okay.
sleeping baby.
I just saw the X's.
Yes, it is a dead body, absolutely. But it would also, if someone's unconscious, because it's all about how you have to carry them. If you're carrying, you just have to carry a sleeping person or an unconscious person or a dead thing differently, right? That's just what I. Oh, and then gweith 2 days. So this is something else too. You don't need the motion verb again. This is a carrying verb, which is a motion verb. Adach ausata yeduk gweith 2 day. So basically, from it, carried dead thing, the boy, then bag into towards. So that's really nice to know. So if you want to say picked it up and put it over there, you don't need to have the second handle. You don't need the verb twice, which is great. Oh, we're 3/4 of the way there. Exciting.
Owe aku aku. Owe atudach ke wukudi.
Aku auk, trying verb.
Yep.
Mm.
And what did he try?
He tried to walk through
So walk out.
towards.
Yeah, so to dach would be out of the inside. Today into the inside. So this would work for all kinds of stuff. When Raven tried to walk out of the whale, if someone tried to walk out of, well, it wouldn't work for like a building or a house or anything. He tried to get out of it. Oh, I didn't have this one. Do we know this verb or do we want me? I didn't make a picture for this one. This is to break a rope-like object. Or a beam of light. Or to have a heart attack. But we, just it's wild how those things are all connected in the Lingít brain. Okay, so let me read it.
Achut, ya tiki, sani.
Sheesh. And this one is in the imperfective, which is interesting. He is, like, I think this is how it's written, but I would probably say, oops. That's what, but there's some interesting things. We really want to sort of get into some stuff, like look at a story and notice when it changes to present tense. There is something there. Richard Downhauer said that's when you got some major scene shift or something. Because it's all perfective, and then all of a sudden you get this imperfective in there. It's a common pattern. I don't think I had this one either. It's to grab or to catch.
Renee, I'm trying to remember the sani. Is that it's little and then tik is plural ownership? So like all of that in there, or no? Am I
It's
getting
just
them all
little plurals.
little plurals? Okay.
Atcha, food. Atchach, foods. Atchak, little food. Atchach isani, snacks. Little foods. Kate, little dog. Kate, dogs. Kate isani, little dogs.
So is there a reason why you didn't put little strings, or is just strings mean little?
It means it's literally little ropes.
Little ropes. Yeah.
That's the word for string. Netu.
Anooshí we Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ʼas'tuyéigi.
Okay, sheesh.
The cannibal grabbed him by the foot. Grabbed his foot.
There's no foot here,
Oh,
or else it would have ʻus. So no apostrophe there, a long, low version of that vowel. Go back up. And what's interesting here as well, so we do get the CH here to switch to the cannibal. And once we've switched, then we get to Lingít, he fell. And it's just kind of obvious who should be falling, right? ʻas'tuyéigi, there's the boy, so that must be the cannibal who picked him up and put him in the bag. But then we just get this switch. Well, that's got to go back to the boy now, and he's probably like 12, 13 years old. That's why they call him Yaduk. So he tries to get out of the bag, so it's obviously him. But now we've made, so the other thing that happens is sort of like a subject switch. Now let's just get back right to the regular subject, right? So the boy is breaking the strings, and the boy is probably doing the next thing as well. He grabbed the cannibals.
so that's possessive there with the.
Yes. Taak.eetí would be in yak, so it could bash the chat if I needed to. Taak.eetí, gaawú, awe on Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Grab the cannibal's club. Okay, folks, here comes our dramatic ending. We're almost there.
An wugudi awe ashawa chech.
Sheesh. Sheetk'á. Notice he got gone long and high. Notice one of them has the wugudi, the I on there.
Wugudi possessive.
Not quite possessive. It has a similar pattern as far as how we put the sounds together. But we call this often like a subordinative. But it's something, I would just say a lot of times I think of this as when. In this case, it would be when.
Is the chich the shaking verb?
Note this is going back to this one.
The hit over the head verb.
Yep. We got a verb for that.
When he hit him over the head?
Well, he hit him over the head when he gone wugudied.
When he got out, so the gun's outside.
That's right. When
When he
he
got out of the bag, he hit him. Or when he came out, yeah.
So when it came out, like, think of like an old style Lingít house, you gotta kind of crouch down to get in and out. Bam.
So was the club in the bag with him?
I think the club he kept it outside his house.
Oh, okay.
And so we'll get to some of the details as well, because this is the cut down version of the story. So that's also some things. I think this gives us, hold on, this gives us something I was curious about too. Go back up here, and apparently you can say it right there. Shoot at the arc. Now we go back down here. Somebody read that one.
He's making a fire, then on it, he put it.
Shoot at the ark a cut our chut. So we go back to our chut verb. And what does this thing do? What is this showing?
Dragged.
Dragged, yep. He builds a fire. And so again, like, this is builds a fire, then dragged it onto it, right? So you do some things that are going on really interesting between like imperfective and perfective. I also don't have this one in there yet, or this one, oops, I guess, or that one. There's still 3 verbs. I don't know how I would possibly, the to be verbs, I'm like, how do you even illustrate that? I don't even know. Anybody know ʼas'tuyéigi? Anybody know ʼuchja? Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. Llinixi saknain would do ʼas'tuyéigi, do yes. Ina a gaawú. Ch'akunsa away do katagu. Ye away kunsa aya ina a gaawú. Ke has a gurtishi. Like, yeah, ke has a gurtish. Ke has a qoshi. ʼas'tuyéigi. Aka away ina away. A gurtlaú. ʼas'tuyéigi. Ketlt. Ja, du a ketlt. Ja, da. Ketlt. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan ketlti awa ʼas'tuyéigi. ʼas'tuyéigi. I just want to pinch that one. A kananik.
The cannibal's ashes blew away.
Well, they did get blown, but we have ʼas'tuyéigi, which means somebody did it. It's gonna be this boy. It's his fault, but it's understandable. He blew the ashes of the cannibal. Now we get a fun one. Káwayík yúbú ne awe. Taak'x'aa ʼusatí.
So did the ashes become mosquitoes?
They did. When they went up into thin air. So káwayík or káwayík or káwayík is into thin air, into space. It is used quite a bit. This is the one you would use to say, we don't want your words to just echo out into space. Taáx'aa ʼas'tuyéigi káwayík awusáchi. A'tuyéigi gaawú ach cánaíonn. Yguniltí shaway. Kedéniuch So like, if it comes down to ceremony, if someone gets up and speaks Lingít at some situation, some public situation, and then something goes awry, and nobody acknowledges what they said, then you have to stop everything and stand up and fix it, especially if that's your opposite. If you're on the wolf or eagle side, and that's a raven. There are times too where sometimes someone's got to stand up, say moiety, and just say. And you'll see this if you study. We'll study some of the speeches from We're going to switch from stories to speeches because the oratory event is coming up pretty soon as well. But we're going to switch to speeches because we've done stories quite a bit. And I want to do some speeches as well so that we see how this stuff functions in ceremony. So yuwune is it happened. Kawayik yuwune awe Taak.eetí. It went up into the air and it became mosquitoes. The ashes of this cannibal. Oh, I didn't have the chat open. Yeah, awe. Ach awe Taak'aa Ḳwáan. It's a big chunky verb on there. And it's gonna happen pretty soon. Ain't gonna be long. You know it keeps snowing. I heard this thrush sing the other day, or someone did. Actually, I didn't hear it. We saw a fly in our house. Taak.eetí. Bum bum bum. Okay, what's this?
Achaway, is that because of this or?
That is why, because of that. Yeah, oh, Taak'aa Ḳwáan.
Mosquitoes will always bite us.
Yes, mosquitoes bite people. Okay, that was a lot of Lingít.
I was going to say something about the switch in tense. I don't know that it pertains here, but I know in French stories, the tenses will switch it'll go to, you're telling a story in the past, it goes to the present to make it emphasized and more dramatic, or to bring it into more like now it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the story is happening in the past, it's a dramatic effect, but I don't know if that's really how it works here.
Yeah, it gives you this sense of immediacy. He's building a fire, and then he drug it on the fire, right? So yeah, I think it does a very similar thing. So when something important or immediate is happening, or if there's some major scene shift, like we're gonna jump ahead, but Lingít has other ways to do stuff like that. Okay, you guys want to take 5 and then we'll reflect on all of this? Because I know we took a long time, but it's okay. Okay, take 5. Okay, let's reflect on the experience and the story. I told another story before this story, and then I talked about like language learners.
Well, in the first story, I heard Anooshí, Russians, and
Yeah.
Ḳwáan.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, they attacked the fort, Mushkitan, and
So before the fight started, this comes from Sally Hopkins. There's a couple things, and also I think Alex Andrews from his version. So I start off by saying, I hope you had a restful break last week. Mine wasn't very restful because I had something hurting in my jaw. And then I said I went to the dentist. And then I started thinking about this thing called ʼas'tuyéigi. Anybody know what that is? ʼas'tuyéigi. It's only in a story that I've heard it. Ās is a jaw, tu is inside, and yéig is a spirit. So I asked I was at the dentist for a long time. Well, I was at the emergency room actually for a long time. And then I said, well, there's a ʼas'tuyéigi, maybe it's that, I said, because they were trying to figure out what was going on. And they said, well, what's that? I said, it's a spirit in the jaw. I said, but I don't think everybody has it. But this is where I heard about it. So the story that I told was a long time ago in Sheetk'á, the Russians had a fort. Their houses were only inside the fort. Everywhere around them was Lingít land. People lived by clans back then. So like a particular clan would live in a particular part. Like usually like a whole village would just be. So like a place named for a city doesn't always fit Lingít Tundatani, because you'd have like, that's where these guys live, and these guys live, and these guys live. But they would live in this area, which would be Sheetk'á Ḳwáan, right? So Sheetk'á Ḳwáan Ani would probably work for Juno, but then you'd have all these different places within it. So the Ḳwáan had their own land. The Taak.eetí had their own land. Taak.eetí probably had their own land. But the big ones, probably the most prominent clans at that time, were Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. So what I heard was that the Sheetk'á village, they saw a person, an old person walking on the beach, and they were thinking, what's this guy doing here? This is our village. They're supposed to stay in the fort. And he was really sick, and he fell down. They ran over there to try and help him, but he died. So the leader of the community and his nephews brought him over to the Russians and said, your man was over here. We saw he was really sick. We tried to help him, but he died in our hands. So we thought we'd bring him back to you. So the Russian leader said, well, come back tomorrow and we'll throw a feast in your honor to say thank you for trying to help. So they did. They came back, this leader and his nephews, and they put food down in front of them. ʼas'tuyéigi. But this spirit in his jaw said, don't eat it. Don't eat it. So he told one of his nephews to sneak back and see what they were feeding them. And they had that old man, and they were cutting meat off of his thigh and cooking it and trying to feed it to the Lingít. So then a big war was getting ready to start. They left. At the same time, the Ḳwáan from Sheetk'á are different from the Ḳwáan from Ḳwáan. However, there was a group of Ḳwáan women who were brought over from Sheetk'á to Ḳwáan, and they became known as Anooshí. The Sheetk'á Ḳwáan did like to go up to Ḳwáan for qin. It's a silverberry, and they're up there collecting that. And the Sheetk'á Ḳwáan. But the Sheetk'á Ḳwáan started teasing them. Ye wutu jich adasa situasuku ye usneyi we Anooshí yekakwati yuhan yani yisha yetki. They said, I guess whatever the Russians want to do to you, they will. To you, to your land, to your women, to your children. Hasakawashuk, and they laughed at them. So the Sheetk'á Ḳwáan went home very angry, and then a big war. There was those two things that I think pushed it over the edge. But I thought of that because I had a toothache. Then we went into this, and I was saying, like, I've been thinking a lot about beginner, intermediate, and advanced, which I don't really want to be saying in Lingít, and maybe not even in English, I don't know. So I started thinking, and then I kind of came up with hin chayach for people who are just getting started. It means they're at the edge of the water. Then hin Taak.eetí for you folks who are in the water. And then Sheetk'á Ḳwáan, which a year from now should be you folks, which means you're walking among the halibut. It's the halibut hole. However, some folks, when I shared this idea, said, well, it sounds like we're drowning. So I was like, okay, all right, yeah, I get it. Okay. So then, and then others said, well, we're in the interior. We ain't got no ocean here. So I said, oh, well, what if we had around the mountain people, face of the mountain people, top of the mountain people? And then someone else reached out and said, well, what about the tree? And then there were two people who were saying this, and one was Southern Taash'aa, and that's how they referred to it. So then I thought, ʼas'tuyéigi, or ʼas'tuyéigi, the tree seed for the beginner. ʼas'tuyéigi, the sapling for you folks, you saplings. And then as for those who are advanced, right? And like are really starting to master it. And then anaskwéin, or anaskwéin for our master speakers as well. And I like that because we're rebuilding the forest. And then you can have dulsaa for the little babies who are in the language nests and school programs and stuff. So I was just thinking about that. I want to share with you and get your perspective. Wasayitu. Yeah, and we have brought this up before where Shashaki, it's like you feel like you're getting to the top of a mountain, scrambling and working so hard. And then you're really like on the top of a hill, and now you can see that there's a mountain back there that most people couldn't even see. So it is, and there is something to it where to get from here to here, as you go up these steps, it does get steep.
One thing that is nice, I like about the mountain is when you reach the summit of a mountain, you're only halfway. Just my thinking whenever I climb tall mountains.
Oh, okay.
Still gotta get home. So it doesn't mean that you've reached really, I mean, you've reached like, sure, the summit maybe, but there's still a long ways to go in order to return home safely.
Yeah, because then you have to go down, back up, right? So.
How about those who went under the glacier are minnows through hook nose, and then those that didn't are little birds all the way.
I see your metaphor and I raise you two metaphors.
I could also think of like the concept of if you ever to make it to the top, that by like going down is actually passing down that knowledge to the younger generations too.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been thinking a lot about water with George and the idea of, but I know it doesn't necessarily work for interior, but coming down to the beach and that when the tide is out, that's when you see all these treasures and thinking about the language as these harvesting, and so you're drawn to it and you're gathering, and then you have to get to a point where you have to swim. Right, you have to swim, and that's like the big kind of next step. And then I was thinking of the canoe, the yak metaphor of like rowing together. You're not alone, and that you are being held up by others as you go further out. But I also love the us, that hold each other up too. But I was thinking, as you get deeper, you have to learn how to swim, or you're not going to get very far. And I know that's what I'm faced with right now. But it's beautiful imagery. I think it's a great way to be thinking about where we are rather than beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So, sheesh.
And there are stories about people and Raven picking up the water and walking underneath it, right? So it does fit with some of the oratory. And then, but also, yeah, there's probably a coastal bias here. It's like, yeah, ocean, let's do ocean then. We'll do ocean. But we could do all three, and there's no reason why we couldn't sort of use this situationally, because even our inland relatives, the ocean is embedded in the language because Taak is relative to the ocean. So, something to continue exploring. And I just keep talking about too.
Well, there's also the thought, like with the mountaintop or the halibut hole, those are two kind of really, I imagine them to be different experiences of the same place. So, being down in the very depths or being at such a height that you can begin to start to see some things pretty clearly. They both work.
Well, Ichta, when you start talking about the depth, I think when you think of the layers of understanding and you are going down into that, you think you understand, but then there's so many more layers to just keep going through.
Yeah, well, and maybe one is like conversation and day-to-day speech, and then one is stories and ceremonial speeches or something like that too. So, because we kind of want to be able to do both, right? We can't only study the big stories and then not be able to do day-to-day conversation, and we can't just do day-to-day conversation and not do the big stories. So I think we could use all three, because I heard great arguments for all three of them. It's like, oh yeah, yeah.
Because when you think, of the really the layers of understanding, when you're up on the mountaintop, you can look around and say, yeah, I got there, but that really those deep parts you don't always see.
Yeah, wow. Well, geez.
I was just thinking too, I keep thinking about the 10 Sheetk'á Ţhkaithník, that idea, especially after the Paul Creek, where you're getting a skeletal story and then you add another layer and another layer. And could this image place us where these stories happen? I was thinking, like, I don't know, it's probably a little too much, but like the path that you're taking as you work through these stories. And I thought of the tree. I mean, I love that story, the ʼas'tuyéigi, and the tribal value connected to it. So everywhere you're traveling in this journey, you're coming upon another oral narrative that has embedded a value, and you're learning that ţhkaithník as part of your language journey as well. So, because you have such beautiful visuals, Ḳwáan, and so you can layer even the oral narratives that we decide to learn as we move through our layers of learning.
I'm trying to master stick figure illustrations. So here's one building a fire. And so like there's some like blowing on something. I think I might be able to get, but I'm really having a lot of fun with this. It's like a nice distraction, because I'm like, how am I going to teach people about conjugation prefixes? Like, let me just draw a picture of a person building a fire. But so during the workshop over the weekend in Anchorage, I was working on this. So these are graduated stories. So here's the idea, is I'm going to be working on probably identifying 10 stories. And I know that folks are already doing this. But my approach with some of these stories is using ones that we've already been teaching from. and then also some that we've documented. So the first one is Taak'aa. So here it is from the mouth of the master storyteller Sheetk'á. It's not changed. It's 155, I think, 156 lines long. Everything that he says is in there, as far as I know. I'll go through and just check it. There's a few sort of tone marks and stuff that might need to be added here and there. Then this is the idea, is like everybody gets to listen to this, everybody gets to read this, everybody gets to work with this. But as far as what we're teaching from, is then it goes down to the ʼas'tuyéigi version, which we didn't even look at yet. And this one is cut down to 100 or to 99 lines. So let's get it under 100, right? And then we have the ʼas'tuyéigi version, which we also didn't look at. So this one is 30 lines. And then we have the dulsaa, which is the version that we would have. And as not only, like, I'm not trying to like disrespect this story or the storyteller, but trying to create these graduated versions so that we can have the language nest working with this 20-line story, which is what we just looked at. It was a 20-line story, which means a bunch of information is missing. It also means like these things have been simplified to as much as possible. And so when you got lines like there was no way he could run away from it, I was like, that line's got to go. We're not going to cut it out of the big version, but we got to work our way up to that. And so that we can become more familiar with this. And could you commit these 20 lines to memory? And could you commit 30 lines to memory? And could you then, once you get up into these top two, could you tell this story in your own way? And that means you might have to skip some of the bigger, chunkier parts. Like when you get up to here, when he says, Waskitse, waskitse, geoxene, getsu, tsu, nikdein. Oh, that should be one word. Taak.eetí. What more could I do so that it could feel pain? And yeah, and that's a really wild. Technically, I think ge is in there 3 times. The yes or no question marker, which it gets really wild. And there's also a purposive verb in there, which means you did some verb to do another verb. And so like that's not going to be in there. But when we start getting into advanced stuff, you should be able to start trying some of those. So like nacht'u'at is a hortative. Let's go. You add a T or an IT to the end to get so this could happen. So I could say, I put my jacket on so we could go. Right? So it's like this happens so this other thing can happen. But don't worry about that right now. That's for next year. This year, the focus is on being able to sort of deal with the stuff, working our way up to this version, which would still have some pretty chunky lines in it. But that's what we did with this slideshow. And the idea that I got this from that workshop was, let's see where to go. Starting off by saying, let's just go over, these are the nouns that are there. This cannibal is named Gutish. I said it, not very many people know that it has a name. Its name is Gutish. This is the image of Gutish. People used to feed hooligan oil to this house post to keep it from coming back. Kus is a club. What else is Kus? Do you remember? I told you an hour ago. Tlech'yata, Gwashisaku, Sheetk'á Ḳwáan, where as ka ke u a. Kus, you do a sock, way as. Lingít as. Kus. That makes sense? Or did you understand it?
That tree called
The tree called Ḳus. A kach kenain. Lingít ʼí. What's
apple.
What's Lingít ʼí?
Lingít crabapple.
It's a crabapple. The crabapple tree is called Ḳus. There's a couple of trees that are like that, where it's the name of the tree and something else, which I think used to be made out of that tree. That's what I would guess. So these clubs should be made out of crabapple trees. Maybe. Tzaks. That's a bow. A bow should be made out of a yew tree because the name of the yew tree is Saks. So then we had Gweil, Tikisani, Ketcht, Taak'aa. Then the verbs. There's a couple of them I forgot. I got to draw more little stick figures. I think the two were blowing on it and grabbing it. So the idea here is to see the verbs in basically imperfective or progressive imperfective, perfective future. So this is hunting. So hunting, was hunting, will be hunting. This one was kind of hard. Some of them are hard to illustrate. This is difficult or hard, for something to be hard, like as a surface. Is hard, was hard, will be hard, or difficult. Could be the same thing. Going, went, will go. Came down towards the ocean. Coming down towards the ocean, went down towards the ocean. I had to change the, that should be a zero verb. Is yek uagut. And then will go down to the ocean. Then did this one, came down, didn't come down. Is looking for it, was looking for it, will look for it. And then I tried to tell you in Tlingit that you could change this to, you could put a noun where the is. Sheetk'á Ḳwáan, looking for a dog. ʼA's'tuyéigi, looking for me. ʼA'ití, looking for you. And then we start going through the story, which we will review on Thursday, which I will also be teaching from my house because we have one car down. One pony's out. Taak'eetí.
Ḥune, quick question. I've been listening to a lot of Anooshí's recordings these days, and I'm wondering, I think he always drops that W in the future tense. And I'm wondering if is that like a regular thing to do for like a speaker to drop that W sometimes?
Yeah, I think the W coming after some of these gutturals, there are some speakers who drop it pretty regularly. Anooshí pretty much always does, I think, for a future. And I would write it the way he's saying it to preserve some things that could be tied to dialect. And some others, you'll have others where they'll, like Zuboff, he puts them in there all the time, even places where you wouldn't really expect it. And so, yeah, that's something that we've seen pretty regularly from him.
Okay, Ganesh. I was just wondering about that.
Anything else before we go?
Well, remind me what we're working on for our midterm.
Yes, you are each writing a dialogue. Do we need like any kind of minimum line number? I don't think so. Just
I
write
think
some
you said 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So it's if well, let's check in if we're feeling panicked by Thursday. We'll just push it back a week. Because maybe I don't know what you did on spring break, but I didn't do anything except lay around and moan about my teeth. So my goal is to never make people feel stressed and pressure, but we still got to get stuff done. I think we can without pressure, but let's have a little check-in on Thursday before we hit record and just see if anybody's ready to start the revolution or to feel like you're just drifting out to sea. Well, grab onto your canoe. Anything else?
Spring break is next week.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for our kids too. Like we have ours early. Like there was one time, I think Pluto, like all the planets lined up, and then UAS, UAA, UAF, and the Juneau School District all had spring break same week. It's wild. There was probably an eclipse and an earthquake, and like one was born, but it did happen one time. So. Okay. Gonna cheese, Johan. Iwishkach Tustin, Ďakujem.
Sheesh.
Gonna
Buenos
cheese,
dias.
everyone.
Buenos dias.
Kune, I don't know if there's some time to schedule just to go. I did present the digital language shell today in Ida's class, but I'd love just your thoughts on it. It's like I can't let it go until I've processed it. So if you have time, I have spring break next week with the kids, and I also sent it to ḳuwligaaw, and I guess Ida will look at it too because it's in the presentation. But yeah, then I can let it go if that makes sense. It's just sort of laying there. So if there's a moment, and then also just checking in with Maria Williams. I know you said you have been talking with her, but she's going to come and chat this weekend.